We are looking at the top 12 players in our consensus rankings in PPR leagues. We welcome you to a Monday edition of Fantasy Football Today. We got a lot of vacation going on right now. Heath's on vacation. I am going on vacation at the end of this week, but I'm not missing any shows. Jamie is going on vacation next week. Dave is sick. So Dan Schneier's here with Jamie. Hey, Dan.
What's going on, guys? Did you hear that little humble brag in there, Jamie? Adam's like, he's going on vacation. Dave's going on vacation. I'm going on vacation, but I'm not missing any shows. Jamie's going on vacation.
I kind of want
to altering all of our schedules to accommodate his.
So, yeah, but then make sure he could tell everyone, yes, I'm not missing any shows. I'm working on my vacation.
You know what? I'm taking Monday off. I don't care if Jamie's not here. I'm taking next Monday off. I'm just letting everyone know now. So, yeah, we're going to look at the top 12. Does anybody know the top 12 in consensus?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jamie. Let's see if you know it. Consensus, not yours.
Consensus will be Christian McCaffrey. In order?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know in order. McCaffrey, Lamb, Hill.
Yeah.
Hall.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jefferson.
Yeah.
Chase.
Yeah.
I forgot to queue up the wrong buzzer.
What was wrong?
Bijan. That's Bijan.
I was gonna say that's what. So Bijan, Jefferson. I'm sorry, Bijan, Chase.
Yep.
St. Brown.
Yep. It's tough.
AJ Brown.
Yes. We need three
Wilson.
more. Who?
Wilson. Oh, Gibbs.
Yep.
Wilson.
Gibbs loves that buzzer.
Taylor.
Wilson.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, again, it's here it is. McCaffrey, Lamb, Hill, Breece Hall, Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Garrett Wilson. A lot of personal preference there. You know, how do you decide? Do I go with a wide receiver? Do I go with Breece Hall? I'd have some questions for you. But first, I have two segments. One is called Want to Hear a Dumb Stat?
I thought that's what we referred to every Azer stat as.
Here's a dumb stat. In 4 seasons, Justin Jefferson has averaged 16.9, 19.5, 21.5, and 20.4 PPR fantasy points per game. It's even better than that if you remove some partial games. But in the 4 fantasy championships that he has played in, Justin Jefferson has averaged 9.9 PPR fantasy points per game. He has never scored more than 14.5 PPR points in a fantasy championship. He stinks. Don't draft him.
That's a
Kirk Cousins. Yeah, Kirk Cousins missed 2 of those 4 games, by the way.
What'd you say? Cousins?
He missed 2 of those 4 games in the championship.
The intro, this dumb stat was perfect for my friends from home, Steve Hall and Mike Denver. Quick shout out, who lost going into the championship game with a lead with Justin Jefferson against Jaden Reed last year. What a devastating way to go down. It's so bad. And they were out by like the second quarter. Reed had scored like 2 touchdowns already. It's nuts.
And Jefferson was pretty great with Nick Mullins.
I know.
Against Detroit, he was, but not against good teams.
Not against Green Bay.
I'm Schaefer will come out here and say, "Oh, he's a quarterback proof." I'm glad. Just prepare.
I mean, he averaged over 20 PPR points with Mullins.
Yeah, all 2 games against Detroit.
There he is. There's Mr. Schaefer.
Jaron Hall started the Packer game, so I don't know what you're talking about, Dan.
I didn't say he didn't start at the Packer game.
You said not with Green Bay.
Yeah, no, Adam screwed this whole thing up because I knew that Mullins was not playing with Jefferson in that Green Bay game. Okay, I don't know how it got contorted to the point where I just meant he didn't score a lot in that Green Bay game, Jefferson.
And he played the second half with Mullins.
All right,
we'll get to that.
We need to know.
If Jefferson is quarterback proof. Do you want to hear a less dumb stat?
Yes.
Okay, good. CeeDee Lamb had 23 end zone targets last year. That was second most in the NFL behind Calvin Ridley. 23 end zone targets for Lamb last year. In his 3-year career, Amon-Ra St. Brown has 13 end zone targets, 10 fewer than Lamb had last year alone. About that. In those 3 years, St. Brown has 13.5% of his team's end zone targets. Last year, Lamb had 34.3% of his team's end zone targets. It might just come down to touchdowns. I mean, St. Brown was pretty good. He had 10 last year. I still think there's room for more because he gets a lot of green zone targets and they could throw more touchdowns, but could come down to touchdowns when you're trying to decide between the top 5 wide receivers.
Do you think that he'll score more touchdowns?
It's hard to project him for more than 10 when he has such a low ADOT, doesn't make big plays. But what I go back with him and Laporta is that they've thrown basically 30 touchdowns each of the last 2 years, the Lions, which is good. Very good. 30, 29, I think, and 30. They've rushed for 27 and 23 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, why do you see that changing? Or
it's
do
just
you
a
see
lot.
that?
No, it's just a lot. I mean, what if it's 35 touchdowns passing and 20 rushing touchdowns or something like that? What if he scores 2 more receiving touchdowns, gets to 12? Then we're talking about wide receiver 1 potential, I think.
Look, he's in the conversation. There's I think I wrote this for the magazine. I'm sure it'll be on the site at some point soon. The Elite 8 wide receivers based on our consensus rankings. And again, you can make the case that it's 9, 10, 12 guys, however deep you want to go. But based on our consensus rankings, there's 8 guys that I think are going to be in contention for the top 12. And the one that was missing was Puka Nacua of the list that we showed previously. But when you get really to the top 5, I think that's kind of where the number 1 conversation comes in. And that's Lamb, Hill, Jefferson, Chase, St. Brown. That's the order for me. Our average draft position right now has St. Brown, I believe, 3rd, ahead of Jefferson and Chase. Certainly ahead of Chase. He's either 3 or 4. Excuse me if I'm getting that wrong. But so people clearly are in the St. Brown camp, and understandably so. He's been a stud in the last 3 seasons, continuing to get better every year. But I do think that you're right. I think it's the touchdowns that will probably sway him, which says a lot because Jefferson has not exactly been a consistent double-digit touchdown guy.
Right.
Never. He's never had it, right?
Never had one?
Career, I think he had 9 receiving and 1 rushing, maybe. Okay. But I don't think he's ever had 10, Justin Jefferson, 10 receiving touchdowns, which is just, that one doesn't really make any sense to me. I kind of get it with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I also, no, I'm sorry. 10 is his career high. He had 10. He had 11 total in 2021. He had 1 rushing touchdown and 10 receiving. But even that, doesn't that feel low? 10 touchdowns on 167 targets in 2021. And he goes for 1,800 yards in 2022 and scores only 8 touchdowns. And I was like, was it a Hawkinson thing? And no, it hasn't been a Hawkinson thing. He hasn't really been a big touchdown scorer. They've thrown a lot of touchdowns. They've spread it around quite a bit in Minnesota. All right. And we've got a magazine coming out. Dan, can you give us some details?
Well, the Fantasy Football Today magazine will be out this summer in stores. There are no finalized details yet on the date where it will be released. We're still in the back end editing, proofing, but Fantasy Football Today magazine, annual fun magazine to check out. We have some really good features this year in it from Jamie. He mentioned one of his, and also from Dave, Heath, and also myself. I got to write a little bit this year. Adam, though, we were looking for some contributions to that 15 magazine, but he didn't step up this year.
No, he's in there.
You've never asked
what his 3 bold predictions.
No, he has a breakdown of his team in the pick by pick. His 2 teams in the pick by pick series.
Oh yes, a nice 150
He has a breakdown
words
of his team in the mock draft.
I'm sorry, let me amend that. Adam contributed about 300 of the 30,000 words to this F15 magazine.
You know what? I could have written an article about ranking the top 5 wide receivers. I feel like very comfortable doing that right now. I feel like good about it.
Well, that was Jamie's idea, and that was not your idea. You need to come up with your own original idea, and then,
Okay, I got an idea.
Adam, I got a bold prediction for you.
Yeah, Bijan will be number 1.
Laugh it off, but I also had Caleb Williams breaking 2 records. What were your bold predictions, Adam? Because, by the way, Adam's 2022. If you check back in that 50 summer magazine of 2023, you're not going to see pretty bold predictions across the board, but Adams take the cake.
I had Jahmyr Gibbs as a top 5 running back. That wasn't
It was
bad.
the one thing that came somewhat close.
Listen, if you got 1 out of 3 in that group from what we predicted.
I know. We had a rough year, but it's bold predictions for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I was pretty bold. All right. I got a few intro questions for you as we look at the top 12. We're going to do that right after a quick commercial break on Fantasy Football Today.
Have you heard of semaglutides? Ozempic, Mounjaro?
Hartman, this could be dangerous. Let's do it.
South Park, The End of Obesity. New exclusive event, now streaming. Exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Looking at some early average draft position on CBSSports.com. Christian McCaffrey is number 1, and he is number 1 in the consensus rankings in full PPR. Last year, McCaffrey averaged 24.7 PPR fantasy points per game. In comparison, CeeDee Lamb averaged 23.8 PPR fantasy points per game last season. In his last 12 games, Lamb averaged 27.7. That would have been, I think, if he had done that over a full season, I think the best wide receiver season ever. Better than anything we've seen in a long, long time, that's for sure. But McCaffrey is number one. Jamie, is Christian McCaffrey easily 101?
I don't think anybody's easily 101 anymore. I mean, especially when you're talking about what's happened to that spot, and now you have the Madden curse on top of it. He's a running back in his late 20s that's coming off a year with a lot of work. And so, look, I think there's going to be some people who are a little bit skittish. But when you talk about when he is healthy, when he is right, when he is doing the things that he's done in San Francisco, which he has the ability to do once again, it's hard to overlook that, especially at that position. So, I think it comes down to what your comfort level is with taking running backs still in the first round, because there are people I think that are definitely just completely getting away from it. And then it comes down to, can you trust a player to produce at this level year over year, again, at that position, because it's been hard to do. So I get it, but I would still take him first overall with the understanding of if he plays to his level, if he stays on the field, it's hard to match what he does in this offense.
How about you, Dan? You think it's easy?
No, yeah, I think it's easy, really easy. And I think I understand Jamie's point. And it was only like 2 years ago where we were like, there were people in the fantasy community like, I will never draft Christian McCaffrey again. He's injured every year. So it's like,
I'm pretty sure Dave, I'm not picking on Dave, but I'm pretty sure Dave said that when
there were people who were very strong
against Carolina.
And so it's not like that just went away because he was a little healthy for the last 2 years, and he's even battled some injuries. But where it comes down to me, like in fantasy, it's all about, in my mind at least, our game is all about volume and then just touchdowns. And while touchdowns can regress and be a little bit luck based, we were at the point last year with McCaffrey where if you went to a sports book, it was like minus money to bet on him scoring a touchdown this week. You had to lay odds on it, and it worked every week. He scored a touchdown, and so I feel like to me, it's like the usage in the red zone that really sells me the most. I don't think anyone has his kind of usage in the red zone in all of fantasy. I'm hoping Bijan Robinson has that this year, and I think he might, which is kind of why. And I'm talking about in the passing game, in the run game, as the focal point of the red zone. So I think he might be RB1, but I don't think anyone really could potentially match that. Even Breece Hall to an extent with Rodgers there. So that's probably what it is for me. It's the red zone usage.
I think also, Adam, this comes down to, and this is kind of the genesis of, the magazine story that I wrote. There's really not I think, clear cut who's the best receiver, because people are in the Lamb camp, understandably so. But, you brought this up. Can he do it again? Or was last year kind of a fluke? And really it was a 10-game sample size that we saw from him from their bye week on. Is Tyreek Hill still that guy? He's got 3 of 4 years over 20.5 PPR points, but 30 years old. Do you want to take one of the other running backs? There's some questions there, but I think it really comes down to, if there was, like, if Justin Jefferson still had Kirk Cousins coming back, I think he would be the easy number one receiver.
Yep.
And there may be some discussion because he was number one at this spot last year. But I think with the uncertainty at the receiver spot, it just feels like McCaffrey, higher ceiling, and I agree with Dan, higher ceiling than Breece Hall, higher ceiling than Bijan Robinson right now. That may change by the end of the year because, again, of age and workload. But McCaffrey just feels like the easy choice to go first overall.
Yeah, we've only done, I think, one real draft that we're playing out, and I had the first pick. I took McCaffrey. I would have taken Jefferson if Cousins were his quarterback, because I think you've got a 28-year-old running back who just had 417 touches. And I also think that's, not 400 carries, thankfully. A lot of it was catches, but he had a lot of carries, probably had like 350 or so. No, not that many, 330, I don't know. But
with the catches too,
that would have been something we definitely were talking about back in the day. An older running back making a Super Bowl run. We would have been worried about that,
I think there's reasons to be worried about it. I don't think anybody's overlooking that. We might not be harping on it as much as we have in years past, but there's definitely, again, cause for concern with him. And look, the 49ers have a track record of drafting running backs, but they did draft another guy. Who knows what that means? They want to give a little bit more work to the backups to make sure they know they're going to be in postseason contention if they stay healthy. So does that mean a little bit more of, load management, to use the NBA phrase, to try and make sure McCaffrey's ready by, not ready, but, at his best in late November, December, and, making that January postseason run? We could certainly see that. We could see, remember when Mitchell was healthy, they were giving Mitchell carries. I wanted to add that. I just want to add one more note on this. I think part of this could be exactly what Jamie just said at the end. Like,
how comfortable were the 49ers with an injured Mitchell last year, and how much more comfortable will they be if he's healthy using him, because he was a weapon for them even before McCaffrey got there. And that's kind of like past 2 years, I was in on the McCaffrey bidding for my auction drafts. Didn't get him the year before I got him. But this year is not going to be a player that I'm in the bidding on for. And I think that's the main reason for me. I think a healthy Mitchell changes how they go about their business there and how many touches the backups are going to get. If it's Mitchell versus some of the backups they had in last year, like there's a night and day difference between a healthy Mitchell and what they're going to get if they put him on the field versus some of those guys they had in last year.
But again, it might not be Mitchell. They drafted, Isaac Guerrero, and for what it's worth, they bring in Patrick Taylor from Green Bay. It's probably somebody that they're going to kick the tires on and see if he has any, special teams role for them. But, bringing in 2 more guys, I think that speaks to what you're talking about, Dan. Jordan Mason may not be that option that they were, hoping to get some production out of. But it wouldn't surprise me if they manage Christian McCaffrey a little bit differently just to make sure that he's not having any sort of injury concerns.
Yeah, look, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with them giving him a little bit less work as long as he didn't lose that red zone work and the passing game work. I mean, if it's 4 carries a game or something like that, fewer, it's not really going to bother me. I like for them to keep him healthy. I still think he could be the best player in fantasy, even if he has fewer carries. Well, he's definitely going to be RB1 in most drafts. Here's my second question, though. Is there a right answer for wide receiver 1? Is there a right answer for wide receiver 1?
No. I mean, you can make strong arguments. Again, this was the magazine story. You can make strong arguments for, in my mind, 5 guys. But, if you want to extend it, like I said, there's 8 guys. But those first 5 guys between Lamb, Hill, Jefferson, Chase, and St. Brown, there's the upside, the numbers, the offense, the systems, everything that they're taking part in to be the number 1 guy. The biggest question is probably Jefferson, just because of who's throwing him the ball. But it's hard to, expect a significant downturn in targets. Like if they had really addressed the running game and not just bring in a 29-year-old Aaron Jones or soon to be 29-year-old Aaron Jones, then I'd be a little bit more concerned, but after talking to Kevin O'Connell and listening to everything that he said, since the draft, because I spoke to him before the draft at the owners meetings, they're not going to change their offense, so whether it's Darnold or McCarthy, I think a lot of people hope it's McCarthy. They're still going to throw the ball a ton. And now you have an offense that's probably down TJ Hawkinson to start the season. Who knows how long he'll be out. That's just more concentrated targets for Jefferson and hopefully for Addison too. But, Jefferson should still be that guy. The contract certainly suggests that. I don't think they're going to pay him that much money and say, okay, now we're going to change how we operate. So, yeah, I think all 5 of those guys have the chance to be the number 1 receiver. I think just the easy choice right now is Lamb in his prime, maybe still chasing the deal. Quarterback is locked in. I thought McCarthy, when I asked him the question, you'll see these quotes in the magazine. He said, you get to the point where I'm paraphrasing here, where the quarterback wide receiver combination matters. And he said this was his words. Dak and CeeDee are in that realm right now, where they're just that duo of what you see. Great. He'll obviously call him a great quarterback, but good quarterback, good wide receiver, those guys clicking. And that's where those 2 are right now.
Okay. Let's go to my third question here. How much do you care about round 2 when you're making your round 1 picks? Specifically, I think more early, like first half of the round. I'm going to let Dan go first. I know Jamie's talked about this a lot, but Dan, how much do you care about round 2 when you're making your round 1 picks?
It definitely matters a lot. And I think part of what Jamie was discussing, I feel like he's right. Like, I don't know how to feel confident about any of those guys as the definite wide receiver 1, but I do feel very confident that they're in kind of their own tier. And that's the problem I have. Now, I'm willing to put Garrett Wilson in that out of hope. But after I get past the Wilson part of this thing, I start to falter a little bit. Like, do I have some hope for Marvin Harrison Jr.? Sure, but I think it's been a little inflated there. And then once you get past that, now you're really into a realm of potentially not even massive target getters or big quarterback problems. We don't even know how to predict the targets for some of those players that we think are getting a lot of targets. So based on that, I am more likely to go wide receiver in round 1. And I want to be in position in that first half of the first round, if I'm picking Snake, to get, because I know there I can get one of those wide receivers. Now I can still get Garrett Wilson later. I guess Puka, I'm not as high on, but I can still get him later. But I really want to get one of those big guys that Jamie mentioned, those 5. And that will allow me to not feel as pressed in the second round. I'm not going to reach anyway for a wide receiver just to get a wide receiver in round 2. I may go Kelsey or something like that in the back end. But I don't want to start my draft running back ever. I know that. And I also don't want to be a position where the best player on my board in round 1 was running back. So I went with it because that's the move. And the same thing happens in round 2 where the best player on my board is running back, because that doesn't work with my anti-fragile type building. I don't like that style of building. I don't want to be investing my major assets at running back ever in fantasy football. But you got to take best player available. And this year it's a weird year because there's not a lot of best player available wide receivers in that back half of round 2.
So if you like to set up your draft, not necessarily all the way through, but you could kind of plan out your first couple picks, especially when you start to see ADP, when you start to do some mock drafts, you study mock drafts, so you start to see how it all unfolds. And so really the question is, assuming you are somewhere between picks 2 and 6, right? Am I get that right? 2 and 6. Do you want to take a chance on Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson? If you map out round 2, and I think Dan's laid this out. If you map out round 2, if you don't love, I don't even think Harrison's going to get there. If you don't love Chris Olave, Drake London, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, that's the group. That's the group of receivers that you're picking from. You might be able to get 2 of those guys, which is Jalen Waddle. You might be able to get 2 of those guys. It's fine. It's not a bad strategy, but you got to commit to those 2. On the flip side of that is, if you take one of those top 5 wide receivers, whatever order falls in your lap, coming back to you in round 2, you're looking at the group of Travis Etienne, most likely. Now, you may get Jonathan Taylor or Jahmyr Gibbs falling, but I don't think so. Or Barkley.
Barkley could fall, yeah.
Or Kyron. But I'm gonna start with running back 8. Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco, James Cook, Derrick Henry, Rashad White, again, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, whoever you want.
That doesn't feel great either.
They are better than that White, right? It's like they're both.
But again, it's how
that's why I'm taking Travis Kelce in that range. Happily.
And that's why I'm saying, you have to map it out. And so if you feel more comfortable with those running backs, which I do personally, than the uncertainty of some of those receivers, on top of the fact, like that group of receivers that I just named to you, one of them will be there in round 3. Now, again, you can say, okay, maybe one of those running backs will be there in round 3 also, but I just don't see that in most of the drafts that we have taken part of, and I've taken part of in some industry leagues. So it's a matter of, what is your comfort level? For me, I would rather go receiver, because I do like Olave and London.
Yeah.
So those are the 2. Once it gets past those guys, I'm kind of out until the 3rd round. But I prefer 2 through 6. Give me one of those receivers. I'll take my chances with the running back in round 2, and then I'll pick from one of those receivers in round 3.
I think there's a big difference in this conversation if you have the 5th or 6th pick, let's say, and the 2nd pick. You have a much better chance of getting a Saquon Barkley or a Travis Etienne or maybe even a Marvin Harrison. If you have the 5th pick or the 6th pick, then you do have the 2nd. I think you have very little chance getting those guys at 23rd overall. And I think if you have the 2nd pick in the draft and you have 23rd overall, I don't really think you should care that much about the 2nd and the 3rd round picks personally. Go back and look at ADP in previous years. We're not great. We're pretty damn good at like picking the 1st round in terms of ADP. Like there aren't a ton of busts in the 1st round that aren't injury related. Start getting into late in the 2nd round, into the 3rd round. There are a lot of busts that aren't injury related. It's not just us. I'm talking about the entire fantasy community, the experts, the non-experts, whatever. I mean, it's just tough. So I would just take who you feel comfortable with personally. But I think, like for me, there are 9 running backs that I love, and there are 9 wide receivers that I love. Dan, you've kind of convinced me to move Kelce up there too. So if some quarterbacks go, now we're talking about 20 picks, but there are not 24 players that I love. So I think that I think you're fine if you have the 5th or 6th pick. You probably get a guy that you really like in the middle of the 2nd round. If you have the 2nd or the 3rd pick, you might be, I don't really want to take Jalen Waddle here. I don't really want to take Rashad or James Cook maybe. It's going to be tough.
I just want to, because you're mentioning ADP, the quarterbacks are going to be in the first 2 rounds. We do not draft that way. And we would recommend not drafting.
Though. I'm looking at other ADP. I'm not just looking at ours.
No. I'm not talking about our ADP. I'm talking about most casual fantasy drafts. The quarterbacks will go in round 2. I'm 1,000% convinced. We say it every year.
How many?
3, if not 4.
But that would help. That would help a lot. Yeah.
I think it's more of like a round 3 range these days. No, Jamie, it's still round 2. I feel like it's
used to be round 1.
Yeah, it used to be round 1 back in the day. I feel like we've gone.
But again, but to play devil's advocate to the people that take quarterbacks early, look at the list we just laid out for people.
I know, right? It's not a bad.
And so
right.
if you just I don't want to take running back 10 because he may be running back 25. I don't want to take wide receiver 11 because he may be wide receiver 15. Why would I not take Mahomes or Allen or Hurts and just know that I have that locked up? I'm coming back in round 3. I may still have the opportunity to take the player that I was considering anyway because of still the uncertainty or somebody else in that range. And now I don't have to worry about quarterback. Now, again, the other side of that will be you may miss out on Anthony Richardson or Jaden Daniels or whatever these guys may be that pop, with a later round pick. But still, you're getting the certainty of what these quarterbacks have been. So I totally get that. But for me, like the way that I would prefer to draft, I would like to see those quarterbacks in that range because then it's going to push some of these other players down. And I may get 2 of my top 12 players on the swing coming back from picking at 2 or whatever the case may be early in the round.
Let's take a look at the top 12 here and start talking about these players individually. Christian McCaffrey, I don't think we have to say too much about McCaffrey. We already did that. He's number 1 in PPR top 12. Numbers 2 and 3 are CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill. This is how Jamie ranks it. He has McCaffrey 1, then Lamb, then Hill, and then 3 more wide receivers. That is not what consensus ADP has. But we take a look at 2 and 3. It's Lamb, then Hill, then Breece Hall, and then Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase. Anyway, if we have trouble even deciding the top 4, the top 5, maybe most people would have St. Brown 5. But are Lamb and Hill easy at 1 and 2 at wide receiver? Not easy, because I've said there's no right. We said there's no right answer. But Jamie, this is how you have it. You have Lamb and Hill 1, 2. That's how I have it. I go Hill, Lamb. Dave has Lamb, Hill. Heath has Lamb, Hall, Bijan, Jefferson, Hill. How about you, Dan? What's your next 2 after McCaffrey?
So my next 2 after McCaffrey would be Lamb for sure as the wide receiver 2. I'll give a quick synopsis, but the main thing is
wide receiver 1.
Wide receiver overall. 1, 2 overall. Yeah. The main thing is what Jamie mentioned a little bit earlier about the connection that McCarthy discussed when it came to Dak and Lamb. I'm a big believer in quarterback wide receiver report. What I'm a bigger believer in is if you're playing in a Mike McCarthy coaching tree. So this goes back to Aaron Rodgers with Devontae Adams, Eli Manning with Odell Beckham Jr. when they were racking up 170 targets a year and 1,600 yards with Ben McAdoo calling the plays. That system, McAdoo comes from the McCarthy tree, is all about getting matchups. It's all about 11 personnel and getting the matchup for your best player in each given snap. So that's what they look to do with Lamb on every snap. It's why he has so many targets. It's why he has so much production there. I don't see that stopping anytime soon with that report just getting better. So that's the one for me. Then it gets tricky because I would put Hill too, but I am getting a little scared with the age. What talks a lot about the age factor. We're talking about it with the players like Devontae Adams. Yeah, Hill isn't quite in that range yet. He's not on the opposite side of 30. What is he, 29 now, though?
He's
30. What'd you say?
He is 30.
He is 30 now, and he had some injuries.
It's his age 30 season. So
okay, it is his age 30 season, and he had some injuries last year that scared me. So I get a little scared there. I don't have Jeff. I would have Jamar Chase as my wide receiver. Then I would have Bijan, then Chase, then Breece Hall in that order if we're including all the running backs. But I have Chase over Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson.
I think at least for me, again, doing a lot of research on this for the receivers, you have to be above 20 PPR points to be in the conversation, and so that's such a select few of guys. Lamb did it last year. Hill did it last year. Jefferson did it last year. St. Brown did it last year. Chase was well short of that. However, when you Azer stat the hell out of this, he played 10 games with Joe Burrow. In those 10 games, he was over 20 PPR points. Right. You go back to his last 22 games because he played 12 games with Burrow the year before, over 20 PPR points.
And that's a great use of an Azer stat.
No,
right
actually, it's a pretty incomplete use.
What?
Of Azer stat.
That's probably the best application of Azer stat I've ever seen in my life on this show.
No, you got to go next level with the Azer stats,
what
guys.
Do you mean?
You've got to do Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow and with T. Higgins.
I don't really care about that. I just care about him with his quarterback.
I respect that. You should. The 52-point game against Arizona, no T. Higgins. I've got his points per game with Burrow and a healthy T. Higgins.
Okay, so 22 games. What is it?
Well, it's in 3 seasons. He has never scored 20 points per game. It's 19 points, 19.7, and 15.3 PPR fantasy points per game with T. Higgins healthy and Joe Burrow healthy.
Can't believe I had the audacity to try Azer stat Azer himself.
It's not fair, really. I mean, I know, right? Yeah, don't bring your A game here. I bring a double A game in. Right? It's not really fair. I mean, because Burrow wasn't healthy last year, But they're actually, and Jacob Gibbs used to point
there was like a 6-week stretch where he couldn't push off his plant foot, so he couldn't stand under center. Everything was shotgun.
There has been a pretty big difference, I think, in the splits when Higgins has been on the field. I don't know if it's like a huge difference, but a difference nonetheless.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say that he can't reach 20 because it was 19.7 PPR fantasy points per game for Jamar Chase in 2022 with a healthy T. Higgins. There were some games where Higgins like barely played. I took those out. If you remember, 2022 was weird. Well, go ahead, Jamie. I think it's a great number to start with, 20 points per game. Yeah.
Yeah, and Hill has hit that 3 of his last 4 seasons, 2 in a row with Miami. I think the thing again with him, and this is where you start to nitpick these guys a little bit. And so, you bring up T. Higgins. Obviously, Jalen Waddle was not the same guy last year as well. And how much of that is going to impact Tyreek Hill, who saw a spike in touchdowns in year 2 with Miami by comparison to year 1. And so I think, you start to look at that. Really, the only negative I have with Tyreek Hill is his age, and you say age 30 season. Well, Devontae Adams in his age 30 season went from 19 points per game to 15 points per game, the decimal points, whatever it is. But, there was a downturn. It wasn't like he fell off a cliff, but he did suffer a little bit for whatever reason. Again, you want to talk about quarterback play, age, all these things factoring in, change of coach. I went Canadian there, change of coach. There was a little bit of a downturn. So, you start to, again, what's the thing here? So like Dan brought up with Lamb, there's nothing changing. The coach is the same. The quarterback is the same. The lack of competition for targets is even better because Brandon Cooks is 31 years old as the number 2 receiver. At least he'll be 31 years old. The run game got worse, so Lamb is just, for me, locked in as the safest bet. He may not finish that way, but he feels like the safest bet. Hill feels like the second, safest bet just based on, again, what he's dealing with in his offense. Tua Tagovailoa leading the NFL in passing yards last year. And we know he sort of, tailed off by the end of the season. Well, what if, because the schedule is a little bit more favorable from a weather standpoint, he does sustain that level of play? Tua does, even with Jalen Waddle being better, even with, a better third receiver, whether it's Odell Beckham or Malik Washington, that Tyreek is still that guy and they're chasing 2,000 yards again. And oh my God, that would be amazing if he can get to that level. Jefferson is the scary one because, again, the quarterback, but this is where you got to buy into player and system. And so that, for me, I put him slightly ahead of Chase because the lack of competition for targets. Yes, Jordan Addison is there, and yes, TJ Hawkinson will eventually be there, but we don't know what TJ Hawkinson is going to look like. Our guy Marty, said that that's a pretty rough injury to come back from, and who knows when he'll be at the level of TJ Hawkinson, if he will, in this season. And so that's why he's next for me. Chase with Higgins there. I think Higgins is going to ball out because he's trying to get a better deal. Plus, as I wrote in the story, if you believe in Joe Burrow's health, you're going to believe in Jamar Chase. If you're concerned about Joe Burrow's health, you're going to be concerned. And look, there's reason to be concerned about Joe Burrow's health because he hasn't stayed healthy.
Yep, that's a great point. I was going to bring that up. You have to have quarterback concerns for Justin Jefferson. You probably, as of right now, have to have some quarterback concerns about Jamar Chase as well. That's another thing that Marty said when we did.
Not to the same level, but obviously an injury concern.
Yeah, right. They're different types of concerns. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will talk. Oh, by the way, now let me wrap it up by this. Everyone's got McCaffrey 1. Jamie goes Lamb Hill. Dave goes Lamb Hill at 2-3. Dan goes Lamb Hill at 2-3. I go Hill Lamb. Heath is the different one here. Heath has Lamb 2. Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill. So, but everyone's, except for me, has Lamb at number 2 overall. I have Lamb 3 and I have Tyreek Hill 2. But basically, most of us have McCaffrey, Lamb, Hill, in some order, more or less. That would be it. McCaffrey, Lamb, Hill. And we have to, we're 35 minutes in. We got to talk about some more guys. We will right after this break.
An unsub, a seasoned one.
And he's leaving a calling card.
How do we find a ghost? I have a plan.
So I think, at this point, Jamie's made it pretty clear. He goes McCaffrey, then he goes 5 wide receivers.
Sure.
Before he starts taking Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson. Who's running back 2 for you? Hall? Yeah. He goes Hall, Robinson, Gibbs, Taylor. So McCaffrey, 5 receivers, 4 running backs, then A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson. That's Jamie's rankings. Consensus is just going to be very different. Dan, you said you start throwing Bijan Robinson in there after McCaffrey, Lamb, Hill. How do you make that decision? of when to put a running back in there. You go Bijan 2, some people are going to have Breece Hall 2, whatever it is. But how to break up that group of 5 wide receivers with a running back, which is what we see in the consensus rankings. McCaffrey, Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Breece Hall, Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
For me, it comes down to, can they be the type of running back that Christian McCaffrey is at RB1, which is fully involved in the red zone, fully involved as a receiver, used a lot in pre-snap motion as the motion guy, and have the actual talent to break off big plays. So I think Breece Hall has all of these things. But my issue with putting Breece Hall behind Bijan Robinson is simply that I think the offense will change enough with Aaron Rodgers leading the way, assuming he's healthy, which I am going to just assume for this exercise, because of how much authority he has at the line of scrimmage before the snap, with pre-snap checks, getting them into different kind of plays, with Garrett Wilson and him, the rapport he's going to build there. Mike Williams is on the field. It's not like they don't have weapons in the passing. They've upgraded the offensive line. I think that will change the offense enough to the point where Breece Hall won't be the same focal point that Bijan and McCaffrey is. And from everything I've heard from Atlanta, Bijan is going to be that focal point. Yeah, there's excitement around Drake London. I understand why. And there's excitement around Kyle Pitts. But Bijan is going to be who this offense goes through. And I'm still thinking back to just what I watched on tape of him at Texas, which was probably the best running back prospect that I've ever seen. I said that at the time when I was doing his pre-draft evaluation with CBS Sports when we did our draft profiles. I said he was a better prospect on tape than Saquon Barkley because he was a better processor of the football. He's a better between the tackles runner. He was more judicious with his space and with his cuts. He is also a better route runner than any running back since McCaffrey. He's not as good as McCaffrey, but he's the next level. And people have mentioned guys like Barkley and through the years. None of them have been the route runner that Bijan Robinson is. So there's still so much potential for me just from the player upside that we could just be looking at the next best star in the NFL. And if the volume is as they're saying it's going to be, and that's what all the signs have been in Atlanta, that's what I'm looking for, that combination of volume and talent. It's not that Breece Hall doesn't have that. I just think there's a little bit more of where the ball can go with the Jets because Rodgers is the quarterback.
Okay. And then obviously you tier Lamb and Tyreek Hill slightly differently than Jefferson and
slightly.
Because if you're putting a running back ahead of Jefferson, who's wide receiver 3 for you?
Wide receiver 3 for me is Jamar Chase.
And Jamie, who's wide receiver 3 for you?
Jefferson.
And then Chase and then St. Brown?
Yes.
I'm St. Brown, then Jefferson. Jefferson wide receiver 5 for me.
Jefferson wide receiver 5. And that's solely because of the quarterback situation.
Because of the quarterback situation, 100% because of that.
It's hard to argue that. Jamie, make the argument for him as wide receiver 3.
Well, yeah, it's the system. You either buy into the system or the quarterback, correct, Jamie?
And I saw a 4-game sample size of it. You could throw the one bad game in there, sure. But, there's also the huge game in week 18 that we saw as well.
It's weird that I kind of feel more comfortable with Nick Mullins throwing the football and completing passes than
Listen, it may be Sam Darnold. and Sam Darnold might have a similar impact, until J.J. McCarthy's up to speed. So I just believe in Kevin O'Connell. I believe in Justin Jefferson. I believe in the lack of T.J. Hawkinson being there, which is I expect it to be a significant part of the beginning of the season, whether it's pup list or just not him being 100%. And so I don't trust Aaron Jones. I don't trust this run game. I think that we're going to see still one of the more pass-happy teams in the NFL as the Minnesota Vikings, and Justin Jefferson being that type of player. Now, have we been burned by these type of situations in the past? Bad quarterback despite good situation? Sure. But in his prime, just getting the contract that he got, the way that this team sets up, I just think that they're going to give him every opportunity to succeed. And Kevin O'Connell's not going to allow Justin Jefferson to not see the ball 10 plus times a game.
So have we been burned by this? I mean, like preseason, mid-season, you can look at DJ Moore last year, for example, and his numbers with Fields compared to Bagent, and they are remarkably different. He was bad with Bagent. He was unbelievable, almost 20 points per game with Justin Fields. I tried to find a situation kind of like this: elite wide receiver, new quarterback at the start of the year. I'm sure I'm missing some, and I didn't think of really any off the top of my head. I just thought about mid-season injuries, but here's one. How about the 2008 New England Patriots, where Tom Brady tore his ACL in week 1, and Randy Moss and Wes Welker were top 10 wide receivers the year before. Moss obviously was number 1 the year before. He had that incredible season. Randy Moss was like wide receiver 13 per game with Matt Castle. Obviously, it's not the same. We're not talking about an entire offseason with this quarterback. We're talking about a week 1 injury, but it's nearly a full season. And the passing game wasn't terrible or anything, but it wasn't Brady. Moss and Welker, they both were worse. Welker, in terms of where he finished, it was about the same, but he was like 3 points less per game than what he was in 2017. And then he went, or 2007. Then he went back up. They both went back up in 2009. So I was thinking about like the Moss without Brady season as like, yeah, he was good, but he wasn't nearly as good as he was the year before or the year after with Brady. And I know, look, Cousins isn't Brady, and this isn't the same thing, but it's the only thing. I don't know a comparison to this situation.
It's not Brady, but it's significant because there's only like a handful of NFL quarterbacks, under 10 for sure, that can throw to all 3 levels of the field, challenge all 3 levels of the field, throw velocity and touch and ball placement and timing. Cousins was one of them. He never got credit for it because he didn't win in the playoffs, but he was one of the few that did it. And I'm just not sold that Darnold or McCarthy can do that at any kind of consistent level at all. And I do like O'Connell. I do like playing in a dome, a lot of those games, all these things, the targets, how funneled they should be to Jefferson. But I need the quarterback to get the football out on time to all 3 levels of the field, challenging all 3 levels. And it's not something I've seen from Darnold. And McCarthy, I don't think, is going to be anywhere near NFL ready this year, in my personal opinion, just from what I've seen from him.
I mean, look, it's a matter of how much you trust McCarthy. I think that because
we've seen Darnold.
We've seen Darnold, but quarterbacks certainly go through a different kind of system, and they look different. Is he ever going to be an elite player? Probably not. Can he be a serviceable player? Yeah. I mean, a lot of people thought Baker Mayfield was broken until he went to the Rams and went through, that system and came out, and now look what he's done in Tampa Bay. Geno Smith, same thing when he went to Seattle and finally got an opportunity to start. Sometimes these guys that look awful at times or look like they're done, they get with the right coach, the right system, the right talent around them, and they're serviceable. And really, it's not about what the quarterback is. It's about what they can do for their receivers, And so, I mean, look, we were talking about Jake Browning last year and how much he was still helping his receiving core at times as well. Some of these guys just get the opportunity to produce. Nick Mullins, not good quarterback. Justin Jefferson, still elite level production, So that's what you're hoping for. And so, yes, I don't disagree with you, Dan. I think a lot of people, if you said Nick Mullins was a starter right now because you saw those 4 games, Jefferson might be the number 1 player. Forget alone number 1 receiver, because you saw those 4, you saw that small sample size. But I'm going to buy into O'Connell and Jefferson as much as I'm going to be concerned about the quarterback play here and still put him slightly ahead of Chase and still ahead of St. Brown.
Can I make one quick point on this, Adam, and I'll wrap up there?
Yeah.
Just one final thing on this. When it comes to this passing game with the Vikings, and this is one thing that I've been considering, with Kirk Cousins in there, they were, and Justin Jefferson's best route were the dig routes, right? It's these in-breaking routes in the 15-yard range. The whole offense was vertical. It was either Jefferson's breaking in or he's breaking out toward the post or deep patterns. And what did he average? Like 7? Did he ever? His average yards per catch has been phenomenal his entire career, correct, Adam?
I'm sure. Yeah.
It has been. Yeah. Now, if we're thinking of Kevin O'Connell as the coach we're thinking he is, which I agree he is it possible he also changes his system a bit to fit the talent? This is something Brian Dable did in 2022 when he was coach of the year with the Giants. He came from a Josh Allen system, vertical, middle of the field oriented, to Daniel Jones. And what he did was he just under center, play action, roll out bootleg, short pass, all sorts of different things that fit his skill set. Nick Mullins is a vertical thrower. He's not a great quarterback, but he is a vertical thrower. Is Sam Darnold a vertical thrower? He's really never been. Is J.J. McCarthy a vertical thrower? He kind of wasn't, in my opinion, at all at Michigan. So what if O'Connell changes the system to fit the talent? Now we're talking about a system that's really depressed for fantasy, in my opinion, from Justin Jefferson's standpoint, because it cuts off all the things he does well, which is win by selling the vertical route and then breaking into the middle of the field and having so much space for those 15, 20-yard dig routes. So it's like, it's another thing I'm concerned about. Where's the system going to go? Is it going to stay the same? And they're going to be like, Darnold, McCarthy, you run our system, even though you don't really have the skill set for it. Or would they change it to try to win football games? That's another thing that I'm a little concerned with.
Well, I will say that, I talked about great wide receiver with a new quarterback. I think, obviously, Devontae Adams was a success. Look, Derek Carr is not Sam Darnold. So that was,
he could throw a football.
It was a downgrade from Aaron Rodgers, but Derek Carr got us a top 5 season out of Devontae Adams, but not quite as good as what we saw with Rodgers. But then you think about Tyreek Hill with
Mike Evans with Baker from Brady.
Yep.
Oh, it's a good one. Yeah. It was horrible for Godwin, but it was good for Evans. But you think about Tua, and that's the thing. Like, I don't know that Darnold's best wide receiver. Yes, DJ Moore. But with the Jets, it was like Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder. Sam Darnold, if he's the core, whoever, he's going to be better just because he has Justin Jefferson.
Hopefully, yeah.
Loa was not a good quarterback before the head coach, Waddle and Hill, and then all of a
True.
sudden leading the NFL.
Well, he had Waddle. He did have Waddle.
Yeah, right. But he had a rookie Waddle.
Yes,
Right.
but that was also he was splitting with Fitzpatrick that year too.
Yeah, and he didn't have as much of a sample size, in my opinion.
Jefferson can bring out the best in any quarterback. However,
Sure.
I do want to point out Nick Mullins threw for 400 yards against Detroit twice, 411 and 396. Jefferson scored 15.4 points against the Bengals, 10.9 points against the Packers, with half of Mullins, half of Hall. And then he scored 26 points and 36 points in 2 games against the Lions, who gave up the third most points to wide receivers. All right, Jamar Chase. So he is a pretty interesting player. I don't really think he's had stretches or full seasons that have quite compared to what we've seen from Lamb, Hill, and Jefferson. Probably, I guess, St. Brown, but I don't know. Like, have we seen the best of Jamar Chase, Dan?
I don't think so. I think he's still entering his prime, first of all. So from that standpoint, I don't think we've seen the best of Jamar Chase. I think he's just going to get better and better as far as the route running goes, but mostly the rapport with Burrow. That's just going to continue to improve. They're still together. They're still working on their craft. And so if Jermaine Burton is the player I think he could be as well, and add a little bit more talent to the slot, a little bit more explosiveness, a little bit more of okay, the defense has to account for this player at times. That could also help Jamar Chase get more one-on-one looks. No, I don't think we've seen the best of Jamar Chase. That's why I have him ranked wide receiver 3. I think he's the best of that group after the first 2.
Jamie, I think it's worth pointing out that while we don't have the same players, while you, Dave and Heath, and probably me and Dan, I'm guessing, don't have the same players don't have the same order, there is a consensus top 8 for all of you. You all have in
Let's
some
see
order.
the list again. Yeah, yes, definite consent, especially because the 9 and 10 on this list, I'm very scared of both players.
Okay, that would be A.J. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs. But the players, like the Elite 8 in fantasy this year, are McCaffrey, Lamb, Hill, Breece Hall, Justin Jefferson, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase, and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yes.
5 wide receivers and 3 running backs.
I think you do not want the 9th pick in a snake draft.
Of those 8 players, who do you think, like I'll just say all 8 of them, guys, and Jamie, you can start, then Dan. Do they have potential to be the best player in fantasy? Christian McCaffrey, yes. CeeDee Lamb?
Yes.
Tyreek Hill?
Yes.
Yes.
Breece Hall?
Yes.
Yes.
Justin Jefferson?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't feel it either at all.
I don't feel it.
I don't feel that one at all. I know he's an amazing player, but with that quarterback, I just don't feel it at all. But I understand the idea behind it.
Bijan Robinson?
Yes.
Yes.
Jamar Chase?
Yes.
Yes. But less so.
Amon-Ra St. Brown?
No.
Okay. All right. So then, Jamie, let's look at 9 through 12. In this consensus, there are A.J. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, A.J. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, and Garrett Wilson. In just your rankings, it is the same 4, but a different order. Gibbs, Taylor, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson. We do see Puka Nacua get in there for Dave at number 12, but it's basically, you know what? It's consensus top 13 because the next 5 after those 8 are in some order. Gibbs, Taylor, Brown, Wilson, Puka Nacua for Dave, Jamie, and Heath. But looking at just consensus, it's Brown, Gibbs, Taylor, Wilson. How do you feel about this group of 4 in general, Jamie?
I think in the spot you are in the first round, they're very productive players that have a ton of potential. I mean, A.J. Brown, 17 plus PPR points in each of his 2 seasons in Philadelphia. Last year had that 6-game stretch where he had 125 yards or more for 6 games in a row. I like the addition of Kellen Moore for him specifically. I think that's going to help him see a little bit of a target spike and some easier routes to help him get some, hopefully a little uptick in catches. And then we'll see if the tush push is still going to be the same, countered with that with the addition of Saquon Barkley, who's a better running back than DeAndre Swift. So you you maybe lose a couple of rushing touchdowns on that end, but you gain them on Barkley's perspective. So that maybe limits the upside for A.J. Brown. But I think when you talk about these 2 receivers and these 2 running backs, Brown and Wilson, Dan said that, we're drafting Wilson based on the hope of Aaron Rodgers taking him to that next level, which, we saw some flashes of that more as a rookie than we did last year. And so I'm with Dan on that. I think that Garrett Wilson could be the next great wide receiver in the NFL. For Gibbs and Taylor, they're a little polarizing. Gibbs clearly with the backfield competition of David Montgomery, and Taylor with the idea of what Anthony Richardson can be. Is that a plus for Taylor or is it a negative for Taylor? And I think we don't know the answer to that. You can sort of guess how it'll work because of what Richardson did with the Zach Moss running back group that they had before Taylor stepped on the field. They didn't play together very much. Taylor and Richardson, only a little bit of that 5th game of the season when Richardson suffered the shoulder injury. So this is why they're after the top 8. There's inherent risk with these guys more so comparatively to the other group. And you throw Barkley in this conversation, you throw Kyron Williams still for some people in this conversation, you throw Puka in this conversation as well. And I think that's why you start to see really 14, 15 guys that could be in consideration for 9 through, I'm sorry, not 14, 15 guys, but 14, 15 guys in consideration for the first round, and about 6 or 7 guys that could be consideration for the last 4 picks.
What scares you, Dan, about A.J. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs?
I don't want to. I shouldn't say varied. Small scares. They're obviously first round players. But the small scare for AJ Brown for me is a stat that I think we'll probably see. I don't want to give it away fully in one of the newsletters this week. So for those who don't know, one quick shout out: Jacob Gibbs from our Beyond the Box Score fantasy analyst here, CBS Sports and Sportsline, is now taking over writing the newsletter, and he's been diving deep on these newsletters. He's had 3 out already. They've been 6,000 word deep dives, well worth your time into the advanced stats. A lot of good nuggets to unpack from a fantasy standpoint that get you prepped for your draft season. But one that he's unpacking is the impact of Kellen Moore and what it's meant for the slot receiver. So what it meant for Keenan Allen, what it meant before that for the slot receiver he had in Dallas, which was CeeDee Lamb at the time. And it's a funnel of targets that are coming that way. Now, who will be that slot receiver? Well, that's what he's digging deep into from early OTAs. It's looking like it could be Devontae Smith. And if Devontae Smith is in that role, that Kellen Moore slot role, that's what scares me a little bit with AJ Brown. Yes, he's in the best shape of his life. He's phenomenal talent. But if I'm getting 100 targets out of him, 105, 110, 120 in that range, that's not a player that I'm that excited about drafting at 9 overall. If Smith is in that role, that still remains to be determined. I think AJ Brown could probably play that role, a different version of that role too. I have to see what happens in camp there. But if Smith is in that role, that Keenan Allen role, I'm definitely a little bit nervous just for that price range for AJ Brown. Now, as far as Gibbs goes, did you ask about Gibbs or no?
Yeah.
As far as Gibbs goes, I have a feeling, again, this is not like a major concern. I still obviously think he's well worth a pick in this range. But I have a feeling we as a fantasy community could be overrating Gibbs a bit just because he's an incredibly fun, explosive player with incredible amount of talent-based upside. And then there's also the receiving factor because there's nobody else in the mix usually at this range that has a guy like David Montgomery in his backfield, potentially in his red zone, taking away touchdowns. Maybe not every touchdown, but some touchdowns. And we already know from last year, they're not just going to phase David Montgomery out. He is a part of that offense. He helps them move the football. He's there on early downs. He's there in certain situations. And there's just nobody else in that range that that's just not, I don't really like investing in a first round pick in a running back who's not a guarantee to get all the red zone touches or, quite frankly, like more than 60% of the touches in general.
Yeah. Would you take Taylor ahead of him?
Yes.
Jamie has them back to back. He has Gibbs 9th overall, Taylor 10th overall. I have said this a bunch, but it's worth repeating. The last 9 games of the season, that was weeks 10 through 18 with David Montgomery back from injury. Jahmyr Gibbs was terrific. He was the number 10 running back per game.
Yeah. There's just not a lot of touches there.
And there weren't
even
really
touches in those games when Montgomery was healthy.
On pace for 200 carries and 45 touches, 45 catches. Like that's
how is that first round?
Well, I think you got to buy into what they're saying, which is they're going to give him more work. And, for what it's worth, we'd always like to buy into coach speak and things that are said in the offseason, but this is also the same group that surprised us and drafted him 12th overall and said, you're going to see him used as a weapon. And he was pretty special. Like you said, Dan, I think we're maybe a little too excited about him, which is understandably so, but they've done nothing short of coming through on the guarantees for this kid. And so does that mean that's where some of the 64 vacated targets go from Josh Reynolds is to Jahmyr Gibbs? And we see maybe an uptick in the reception total. Do we see a little bit more goal line opportunities coming his way or just more carries overall? I mean, again, that's, the question you have to ask yourself. And so for what his opportunity is behind arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. Let's not forget about that.
Yep.
And so all these indoor games, 3 games outdoors this year for the Lions, I mean, this could be a juggernaut, so speaks to St. Brown and what his upside is, speaks to Laporta and what his upside is, and speaks to Jahmyr Gibbs and what his upside is. And I also think, the counter to that, which I don't think is necessarily a pro Gibbs argument, is just don't forget about David Montgomery. I think he's still going to be enough of a factor that, even if he's pushed down in a little bit more of a secondary role, that can still be 10 touchdowns and could still be close to 1,000 total yards based on how this offense will operate.
Hot take that doesn't matter. If Jahmyr Gibbs, if David Montgomery got traded, weren't on the team, I'd take Gibbs 1 overall.
I'm out on taking it. I love the idea of it behind it, Adam, but he's still a 195-pound running back. He's not going to be like Christian McCaffrey. There's like how many they're not just going to overload him with touches. They'd find somebody else, I think. I don't know. At 190 pounds, I doubt they're just ramming him into the ground in the David Montgomery role plus his role.
Man, remember what he did though without.
He's phenomenal talent. It's just a matter of can he hold up if he was in a massive workhorse role?
All right. Well, fine. I'll take him 1. I'll take him 1 anyway. Just see
Fair. Go for it. Yeah, you can just have fun with it.
I think about Puka Nacua. We're going to talk about tomorrow, but I think it's funny. Justin Jefferson as a rookie goes for 1,400 yards, finishes as like a top 6 receiver overall. I think he was 10th per game. He was 10th per game. I know that in PPR. And then his ADP was 23rd, according to Fantasy Pros the year before. I remember that. He was like a late 2nd round pick. And then he just, became Justin Jefferson, right? He just solidified himself as the number 1 receiver. Puka Nacua, as an elite receiver. Puka Nacua goes out, sets rookie reception record. I think most yards for a rookie. I don't think the most touchdowns. And he's 13th, and it's like, maybe he's just better than, maybe he's just going to be better than almost all these guys. Maybe he should be ahead of A.J. Brown. We'll talk about him tomorrow, but you might actually at 13th be getting a little bit of a discount on a guy who just had arguably the best rookie receiving season ever.
That depends, I think, entirely on if you think Cooper Kupp will come back healthy and stay.
I mean, maybe, but
no, entirely on that, because Justin Jefferson, when he broke out that second time, he didn't have any target competition at the time. And it's
Adam Thielen. I don't know.
Yeah, Adam Thielen, but
Cooper Kupp is 31, right?
Again, if you think Cooper Kupp's going to be Adam Thielen level, then that's one thing. Or if you think he could get back to close to what he was when just healthy, depends what you think on Cooper Kupp. I'm bullish on Cooper Kupp, but that's just me.
Does it even matter though? Maybe they're both.
Maybe they could both put up wide receiver one.
Remember,
just 2 years ago, Cooper Kupp was like easy top 3 wide receiver back-to-back years.
Yeah, per game he was number 1 back-to-back.
Yeah, it was number 1.
Father Time is undefeated.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, no, that could be it for him.
Okay, that's our top 12. Again, I'll read the names for you. It was McCaffrey, Lamb, Hill.
Anytime on Taylor?
Yeah. I thought we kind of did. Okay. No, we can talk about Taylor. In fact, I'll read an email about Jonathan Taylor. Let me get that email up here. Sorry. What happened to my notes? Oh, here we go. Email from Ted. I'm not understanding all the hype for Jonathan Taylor. He's around 1 ADP, yet every running back that plays with a run-heavy quarterback does not produce that way. We don't have much of a sample size with Anthony Richardson, but the dude runs a ton and runs into the end zone. The Ravens don't produce a top 10 running back. The Bills don't produce a top 10 running back, except last year when I believe Cook finished 10th. The Eagles don't produce a top 10 running back, yet we expect Jonathan Taylor, who's probably playing with the most run-heavy of all of them, to be top 5 or 6. I don't see it. I don't get it. Any thoughts, Jamie?
Well, I mean, you could nitpick some of this, depending on how you want to break it down. Mark Ingram had a 5 touchdown season with Lamar Jackson when he was the MVP. I believe he was in the top 10, if I'm not mistaken. That year.
Wait. He had a 5 receiving touchdowns. He had how many touchdowns? He had like a 15 touchdown season or something.
5 receiving touchdowns, excuse me.
Yeah, he had a crazy touchdown season.
Miles Sanders 2 years ago had 10 touchdowns, right? 11 touchdowns with.
Yeah, but he's right though. None of them played like first round picks. I do think James Conner probably did.
But you're talking about guys that aren't Jonathan Taylor.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, to compare Mark Ingram at that point in his career, I think it was 27 or 28. Miles Sanders is certainly not at that level. Who else?
And I think we saw last year when Taylor was back, he was playing at an RB1 level.
Right, but different quarterback. They didn't play together. So it's a matter of, do you buy into Shane Steichen, who did the same, had a similar type offense, running quarterback, Miles Sanders, so was able to get that type of production just from his running back alone. If you're drafting Taylor with the idea of him being a 50 catch guy, you're going to be let down because that's not going to happen in this offense. He barely did that. I think if he ever did it at all in his 2021 campaign when he was a superstar, he's just got the ability, I think, to be a league leading rusher, and score 15 plus rushing touchdowns. So that's the opportunity for him. So will he lose some rushing touchdowns because of Richardson? 100%. Will he gain because of some RPO benefits and, opening up open run lanes because of the fear of Anthony Richardson? 100%.
Yep.
So for me,
and
he's
will
a
they
first
be in
round
scoring
talent.
position more? That's the other thing, right? If we're worried about him losing a percentage of the touchdowns in the red zone, what if there's just more touchdowns to come by in the red zone because Richardson is a phenomenal breakout quarterback?
Go ahead, finish up, Jamie.
No, that says it. I don't think you're counting on him to be a receptions guy. So when you start to compare him to, let's say, the guys that are going to go after him, which are Saquon and Kyron and, maybe ETN, I think that's, the debate you have to have. Is Barkley going to catch a lot of passes from Jalen Hurts? Well, we haven't seen that in that offense.
Nah.
And is Kyron Williams going to still continue to be that guy? I think he's the most polarizing of the group. I think we'll talk about him tomorrow. But, do you trust him with Blake Corum there to, be that type of player again? The Rams have two guys like that, a 5th round pick, from Puka Nacua and a former 6th or 7th round pick. I forget what Kyron Williams was. Can those guys do it again? And that's the biggest question for both of them.
Okay, I can think of only one running back who's played with a mobile, like a real true running quarterback and has been first round worthy. And I would have to say Christian McCaffrey with Cam Newton, right? Didn't McCaffrey have some 27 point per game? Let's see.
His first big season, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like Cam Newton didn't have a history of throwing to running backs until Christian McCaffrey came.
Sure.
All right, so 2018, 23.8 points per game. Let's see what Cam Newton was doing in 2018. Yep, he was Carolina's quarterback. He started 14 games. 23.8 points per game is pretty amazing. Now, 20, yeah, but I guess it's worth noting that McCaffrey didn't get to the 27 or 29.3 points per game was the next year where Cam Newton got hurt. But still, 23.8 points per game, 107 catches. But only 7 rushing touchdowns. This is a good email. It's a great point. There are problems with mobile quarterbacks. They run for touchdowns. Lamar Jackson doesn't really do it near the red zone, near the end zone that much. That's one good thing about him. But they don't throw their running backs that much either. They don't throw that much. So I see the point. But we're hoping for like just great efficiency. 1,500 rushing yards, that kind of thing. Like just a great year for Taylor.
If he's 1,500 and let's say 12 and 30 for 210,
you could just stop right there. If he's 1,512, then he's going to be worth a first round pick.
But that could be Derrick Henry too.
Yep.
Yeah,
I the 1,500 part, but
no, I'm just saying, the Derrick Henry
12
numbers,
and 15.
Right. There's certainly similarities to those two.
Yeah.
Okay. Dan, so I think personally I made a great decision not going to the Yankees game on Friday.
Why do you think that? Because they got blown out?
The weather, they got their butts kicked. They got their butts kicked immediately.
What would the weather matter? We were inside a box.
Yeah, it's just like, it's nice to go out in nice weather. I don't want to go to the train.
Last time he was at a sporting event,
actually, it was pretty cool. It ended up being pretty cool at night. Like the temperature went way down, at least in the seats we were in.
I would have been
Last
cold.
time he was at a sporting event with you, he had to walk 15 minutes though, so that was brutal.
Just to get That's right, but apparently I missed something great.
You did miss something great, Adam. So incredible experience. Shout out to Whatnot for doing it. You had a box suite with you can walk outside the box and get into the actual Yankee seat. So we're watching the game early. Not great. Yankees getting killed. Obviously, we put a little bit of a wager on the Yanks because we were watching them, and that didn't go great. Carlos Rodon throwing meatballs. But in the middle of it, in like the 7th inning stretch, they did, the company called Whatnot, which is a sports card company, did something called an unboxing. So we all came into the suite, and they handed us numbers out of a hat, 1 to 20. My childhood friend I brought with me, Steve Milano, diehard Yankees fan, knew he'd love this whole experience, so I was happy to invite him. He's standing to my left, which Adam would have been on if Adam were here with me. And we're handing out numbers. He gets one of the last numbers picked. I get the second last. He gets the last. Picks it out. Turns it over. He's like, oh, 12. This is my anniversary date. This is a lucky number for me. Okay, whatever. They start unboxing the cards. They're like, like there's usually one really, really good card, and that's what we're looking for. And they have these thing called sweats, which is like they take out this briefcase and they open up the briefcase, and there's 3 cards that are like barely revealed and they're hidden, and they're the sweats. And I love gambling. He loves gambling. So we're hyping everyone. This is the one thing. I don't know if this would have happened without the hype, Adam. And I don't know if you could have hyped the same way that me and my friend hyped. You're not really, I don't know if I put you on hype guy. So we're hyping it up. Oh, here comes the sweat. Here comes the sweat. So they get to the sweats. And so they get a couple cards, and there hasn't been anyone that good yet. And my friend Steve gets his number 12. This again, Adam would have been standing to my left. This would have been Adam's number. And why would Adam be standing to my left? I always put people on my left because the other side is my good side. So I put people on my left. Anyway, Adam's standing to my left. Gets number 12. They're starting to unbox it. They're revealing. And the guy from the company is like, oh my God, it's blue. And we're like, what does that mean? What does blue mean? And they're like, blue means it's a 1-of-1 card. So this is the only card printed of it. So he's unveiling. It's a 1-of-1 Nolan Ryan card. 1-of-1 Nolan Ryan. So he pulls this, but gives it to my friend. It's in this nice case. And so like we're both BSing with them. And my friend's like, yeah, like what do you think this is actually worth? And the guy's like, this is probably worth between $3,000 and $5,000.
Oh my God.
Yes. A 1-of-1 Nolan Ryan. Yes. That was your card, Adam. That was your 1-of-1 Nolan Ryan card. Between $3,000 and $5,000 value today.
Oh,
I ended up getting some crappy catcher on the Nationals, like a prospect they've never heard of.
I suck. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
All right. Things real quick before we leave here. I have a doubleheader tonight in softball. Game 1's at 7:00, which is fine.
Ooh.
Game 2's at like 8:15. I got to skip it, right? For game 7. I'm
skipping it. Starting second baseman.
I'm skipping it for game 7.
I mean,
7.
They might lose by 12 if you're not there, as opposed to 7.
Exactly. The other thing is, do I let my son stay up to watch the entire game?
Is he a Panther? He's been watching the Panthers?
Yeah, he's 5 years old. Now, he goes to sleep at like 10:15 usually.
And he's a huge Panthers fan?
Yeah.
Also, why is your 5-year-old going to sleep at 10:15?
It doesn't matter what time we put him to bed.
Can't stop him.
Well, I think you'll know by hopefully the game flow. If they're still in it, then you let them stay up.
Maybe I'll watch on my phone while I'm like in the dugout, But
no.
I thought about this. The last time one of my teams was in Game 7 of a championship was 30 years ago.
Wait, the Panthers are one of your teams?
I mean, they're the lowest of my teams.
I didn't know this was considered one of your teams.
I barely consider them one of my teams. If this were any other game, any other of my teams, I wouldn't even think about.
Right. It would, of course, you would never play softball.
Right. But the Panthers are like the least of my. But the last time one of my teams was in Game 7 of a championship was the Knicks Rockets in 1994. So I was thinking, like, I may never get a chance to watch Game 7 of a championship with my son ever. Who knows?
You know what? Let him stay up. You've sold me. You just completely sold me with that comment. Let him stay up.
What does he have?
Let the boy stay up.
He has school on still Tuesday.
No, give him the day off. Give him a day off.
You guys are still in school?
2 more days, but they're
Adam, give him a day off of school. Give him the day
him
off. Give him the day off. Write him in sick. He was sick that day. Now, easy. You're definitely not making him go to school.
Oh, wait, I'm wrong. I forgot about the Yankees. Yankees 2001 against the Diamondbacks. They lost Game 7. But still, it's pretty rare.
You're bad luck. Go play softball. Don't watch it.
No. You let him watch it. You let him stay up. You enjoy this amazing experience together, and you'll remember it. He'll remember it. But then you don't make him go to school the next day. He obviously gets a sick day.
If he wakes up on time, he'll go to school. If not, he doesn't have to go to school.
No, he'll decide if he goes. Let him decide.
He's in kindergarten. He likes going to school.
Okay.
Like he wants to go. All right, let's go Panthers. Let's get this win. And thanks. We'll talk about PPR 13 through 24 tomorrow. See you, everybody.